Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you can hear me there in the back. Thanks. Before we get started this morning, I just want to open in an appropriate way. And looking at you all here this morning, all of you have most probably been driving here. And we just accept that you're driving and you come here safely and got on a plane and you don't even know the pilot and you trust your life with him. And even up here, it's take a bit of time driving. You actually experience we live in a beautiful country, and we're not always very appreciative in regards to that. And this morning, I'm not going to open in the regular way. I'm going to ask that it's a diverse audience that we have here. And each of us has got its own needs. We do need to pray for our politicians, our state president, and for wisdom, guidance, and even for the community in the agricultural community we're living in. Not long ago, in December to be exactly, you were all very highly stressed of a month of drought and it didn't rain and all of that. Just soon after that it started raining, and we experienced in the soybean industry one of the best crops ever. And looking just back a month or two, or in December, as I say, we were very pessimistic. So there's a lot of actual things happening that we should be really thankful about. We're healthy. Everybody most probably woke up, well, the wife had to wake you or whatever, but we came here on our own. So when I give a moment of silence this morning, I want each of you to say thank you for what we've got. Pray for those who make decisions in this country and have to lead the country. And thank you for what we have. We all of us sitting here this morning are privileged to have had most probably a breakfast or something to eat, or outside there's snacks to eat. We should thank the Lord for that. And we should also, for all of us sitting here, has got a responsibility in regards to people out there who hasn't got food. And we should ask the Lord to help us to experience that responsibility, that we should make sure that we create a country where prosperity and food is available at affordable prices. So I'm going to give a moment of silence, and we thank you and ask and be blessed. Just a moment of silence. Amen. A warm welcome this morning here. It's nice to see all the faces, some that we know and some new ones, and some of us are getting slightly grey, and there's a new generation coming in, and it's nice to see that. I'm really, really honoured to have you all here this morning. People are still arriving. As far as I know, the traffic in this part of the world isn't that predictable, so people will arrive late and whatever. But it's nice to have you here this morning, and on behalf of the PRF and Ooport, it's our privilege to host this event, giving something back to the soy industry that's making a remarkable impact on this country. If for those of you who can still remember 15, 20 years ago, the soy industry in South Africa has been a Mickey Mouse thing that started growing. And in the last couple of years, it's become the second biggest crop in the country. And it's still growing. And I must say, looking at that, there's a lot of you that made an impact on that industry. And it's not a single person or a single institution who made that, or just I claim all the credit for the PRF or Oorpot or whatever. It's a whole value chain. And all of us together make the impact on the industry. It's not only better seed, it's practices, farming practices, it's knowledge, it's experience that make the big difference in the soy industry. And it's going to continue doing that, because on this stage, I think it makes economic sense to plant soybeans. So going forward, I'm very positive that the oilseeds industry, down from where I'm coming from, the canola industry, you say the same thing, where, and don't stop planting it, it's got a challenge of its own, but it's not impossible. But going forward, I think it's the industry that's going to grow in the country. It's made massive impact. And from the PRF side, we've had this view of making South Africa self-sustainable in regards to protein for animal feed, when we started this whole venture into soybeans. And if looking back, we actually achieved that 2 years ago. We achieved that. And going forward, what now? Actually, we've achieved the goal, but once you achieve that goal, it's like that little dog catching the car. What now? What are you doing with it? And I think the biggest challenge now is to keep this milestone that we reached, to keep that sustainable for the future. And if my economist friends will talk about that later, we moved away from an import scenario pricing model to an export pricing model. And something that put pressure on producers to produce more with the same. And I think that's our challenge on this stage today. And I'd like to learn from our learned friends around the table. How are we going to do that? And what's there out there, you in the seed industry, what's there that we can help us achieve that goal to keep this drive and in momentum in the soy industry going? Looking forward to that. With our first speaker this morning, Leandro, and when he's talking, I'm one of the most diverse and informed researchers, that's what you actually are, in the industry that I've ever met. And I've had the privilege to have a short couple of talks with you. Listen to you, because if you want to learn something, learn from the best. And looking at Brazil, I must say a couple of million tons you're producing is slightly more that we produce in South Africa, most probably 167 million tons more than we're producing. But that's not, we've got to learn from you. We're going to see what's your challenges, because looking from the outside, it looks like just this utopia. Everything is going well and everything is perfect. And it's nice to listen to what you're saying, and we're looking forward to your presentation today, because I think that every country in the world producing any commodity does have its challenges. And how are we going to use those challenges, building opportunities going forward? And in the end, for us, as South Africa soybean producers, we most probably ain't an issue for you. We're not going to compete in the world market big time, getting you out of the market. But we've got to learn from what you're doing and how are you doing it. And talking to Elrod and the people that know the industry, I think you understand a bit of the challenges we've got and also the opportunities we've got. And we like to hear, and it's fantastic to have you here this morning. Thank you for your time. You see his resume. No, that is the wrong one. Maria, you should put the nice one. This one is hopeless. The right one on the board there. But you're still, as I've said, a researcher. And I must say, for those who can still remember, EMBRAPA has been part and friend of the PRF and Oorpot since I can remember. And sharing in not so necessary in varieties, whatever, but in knowledge and expertise that we've had. You're more than welcome, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's really a pleasure to me to be here in South Africa for the first time. And in name of Erhard, I'd like to thanks to the PRF for the invitation. It's really glad to represent EMBRAPA here in South Africa, and especially with PRF, an old friend that we had from Brazil, from our research, that came here and make this partnership. And we hope we can reestablish our partnership between our institutions. So what I will present to you a little bit in this morning, it's our vision or our reality of our industry in Brazil, of the soybean chain. And for sure, even with the big producer in the world, it's not everything is in the heaven. We have some problems, really huge problems, exactly like you have here in South Africa, or in the whole continent of Africa. So let's start with some numbers. So actually we have in Brazil around 47.5 million hectares just for soybean production. So in the last year, so in this harvest, we took a little bit around 168 million tons in the whole country. So when we compare, for example, we have a huge difference from the south of Brazil, from the center-west, southeast, and even part of the northeast of Brazil, and the productivity. For sure, we have different soil conditions, weather conditions, and way how they manage the problems. But it's important to see that we could have an average around 3.5 1,000 kilos by hectare in average. For sure, we have some regions that we can have less than 2,000 kilos, but we have some farmers that can grow up to more than 6,000 kilos by hectare of soybean. This is really variable. It's really important to see how is the best way to manage this. So about these agronomic parts, we'll talk after lunch. So when we consider, for example, our last the season 2024-25, we took in Brazil around 330 million tons of grains in general, not just soybean, but soybean, corn, rice, beans, wheat. So this is our productivity this last harvest period. And for sure, we have problems all around the year. So when we took the last 4 harvest seasons, for example, we have 2 specific years that we have problems with drought. So you can see that you have less productivity, even with increased areas of soybean every year, around 4 to 5%. We have in some years of the drought, we have this less productivity, we lose a little bit, but we always trying to improve this, how to manage the soybean crop, even consider the drought periods. It's important to know that in Brazil, we don't use irrigation for soybean. It's already dependent of the weather, dependent of the rain season. So we have in Brazil, after 2019, the big shift when we compare our production to United States, for example, because it was the year that we overpassed United States in the soybean production and when become the biggest world producer in about soybean. So after this, we are always increasing our productivity, and for sure, not just link it to the genetic of our soybean, but also how we manage the crop. So when we start to compare what we have now to what we have in the beginning of the 70s when we started to grow soybean in Brazil, so we say that we had an average of productivity around 1,750 kilograms by hectare. In these 50 years, we increased around more than 1,000% in our productivity 100%, sorry, from 1.7 to 3.5 thousand kilograms by hectare. This is important because we pass from 12 million tons of soybean 50 years ago to more than 150 million tons of soybean actually. And the area in the beginning was around a little bit less than 7 million hectares of soybean, and now we have more than 47 million, 47 million hectares of soybean. So this increasing, even if we increase the area in around 500%, our productivity is more than 1,000%. This is due to how we increase our management of the crop, and especially about the genetics, the seed quality. Everything together make us really a good producer of soybean. But for sure, when it's important to you to know our farmers' profile. Everybody thinks that all farmers of soybean in Brazil is big farmers, huge farmers, but it's not true. When you give a look, for example, in our 5 regions in Brazil, especially 4, when we have our main soybean regions crop. In the south of Brazil, for example, the average, so more than 80% of our farmers have less than 50 hectares of farmer. So the big part of the south farmers' production is really small farmers. More we go to the center-west, especially in the north and northeast of Brazil, more big farmers we have. So in the central west, that correspond actually to quite 50% of our soybean production, the average of the farmers is a little bit less than 500 hectares. When you go a little bit far in the new frontier of soybean in Brazil, that is a mix of north and northeast of Brazil. This is just abbreviation of the 3 states, that is Maranhão, Tocantins, and Piauí. You see in the Brazilian map after. In this one, we had average of 500 to 1,000 hectares, really big farmers. But even in these areas, we can have huge farmers. We have some farmers that have more than 15,000 hectares. This is the reality, but the average is important to see that in south of Brazil is less than 50. And even with the small areas, they make it the agriculture profitable because they can organize themselves. And I will talk also about the cooperatives, like they work together and how they can manage all the costs of the agriculture in Brazil. So when I say that the south, specifically in the south, but it's increasing in other regions in Brazil, they're organized in cooperatives. So what they have is really, just in Paraná state, for example, we have 59 cooperatives. So it means that we have quite 200,000 farmers, not just soybean, for all crops, that's organizing in these cooperatives. So you have also increasing in Mato Grosso. We have a lot also in Rio Grande do Sul state that is bigger than Paraná state. So we have even more farmers over there. But also in the center west of Brazil, it's becoming a reality, even if the farm is a little bit bigger than in the south. And what is the advantage that they have? So these cooperatives, they can also not just help the farmers with the basic of the consultant with an agronomist, how they can manage the crop, what time they can spray the fungicide, insecticide, how they can use the fertilizer, but they also can have some industries. So they can process the soybean, the corn, the wheat, all the grains, and sell outside the country and sell even inside the country and make it profitable for the farmers also. The farmers receive part of this selling of the industry of these cooperatives for them. So they can make an industry themselves and make useful all of them together. So this is one example of the biggest cooperative that we have in Brazil, that's from Paraná, that was created in the 70s. You see that this one is an old concept in Brazil that started even before we have so huge areas of soybean production. So actually, they have more than 32,000 farmers that they part of this cooperative. They have more than 10,000 employees. They are inside 3 states of Brazil, in 76 different cities of the country, and especially they handle around 5 million hectares. It means these 5 million hectares is not from the cooperative. The cooperative is not owner of the land. They just help the farmers that together have these 5 million hectares of farm. So this is really important because they have not just the industry themselves, but they also have a bank. They can give insurance to the farmers. They can give also, they can borrow money to the farmers to buy equipment. And also, these farmers don't need to buy, for example, harvest machines all the time. They can use these machines from the cooperatives exactly because they can handle in the period of harvest season in Brazil that's changeable from part of January up to the middle of February, for example. They can use this machine together and they don't need to buy every farmer, every 32,000 farmers. They don't need to have all the equipment. But the most important is that when you represent 32,000 farmers, you can better negotiate it when you need to purchase an input. So you can negotiate how much you pay for an insecticide, for a fungicide. You can negotiate with the seeds company how much they will pay, exactly because they represent a lot of inputs that they want to buy. They share resources. Like I say, they don't need to have all the machines and all the trucks to transport the soybean from the farmers up to the storage or even to export. So they can share all these resources. And for sure, they have a specific training program, so the farmers can have in these cooperatives better agricultural practice, technology, new technologies that arrive in the country. They can have access, they can be trained with how to handle the best management of the crop, in what time they need to use the insecticide or the fungicide. I will talk later, but one of the biggest problems that we have in Brazil that you don't have here in South Africa is the rust. This is our main problem. So this is really important for the farmers, how they can manage, because we have a lot of resistance for several diseases in Brazil to our fungicides. So if they cannot be able to correctly manageable this fungicides application, the cost production will be increasingly high for them. So why this is so important to have these agricultural practice and training with all the technologies that we can have. Several farmers are already using drones in their own farm, so they can really have access to new technologies. And for sure, they can negotiate better price in the market, so all these cooperatives have their own trades exactly that can manage where or when to sell or to export the soybean or even the corn to another country. They can manage, okay, I want to sell now. The cooperative didn't force the farmers to negotiate their own grain. They just help them when in the better price that they can get for their own production. And when we see the soybean seed market in Brazil, it really changed a lot in the last years. But actually, what I have in Brazil that is really important to South Africa, we were discussing yesterday that this model that we have in Brazil, that it should be done here also. We have also, so in this huge area of soybean from the south up to the north of the country, different maturity groups. So we start from 4.5 in the extreme south of Brazil. It can go then more than 9.5 in the north of the country. So it's really important to know all the weather conditions, the soil conditions, exactly because we sow soybean exactly like you in the summer period. So independent of the states, we can come from October up to January or February. Maximum, we say, at beginning of March. So this is important to manage exactly the early stage maturation in the soybean, because in some regions we can do up 3 harvests, not soybean, but we can manage with soybean, corn or wheat or cotton, and even put a little bit of grass to feed animals. So, but all around the country, at least 2 harvests every year we can have. So this is important that we have this early maturation group in the south of Brazil, for example, because we can have frosts here during the winter. And what normally, because of this diversity of ecosystem, is really important before these seeds go to the markets, that we make these value cultivation and use tests exactly to see if the cultivars that we have developed from this region 1, for example, that is divided in 4 macro regions, is really well selected and could be improved or even better than the before seeds that we have in the markets. So every year in Brazil, we have new varieties adapted for several different regions. So this is really important to be done in the areas that you produce soybean in South Africa, because you have difference from soil conditions, weather conditions in the 3 main regions that produce soybean. So it's really complicated that you say that the same maturity group that you have in the center of the country, you can use in the north of the country. So you need to test different maturity groups. And exactly, I know that you just produce 1 harvest in the year, but it's important to select the best one with the best productivity. Using a little bit together with what we have in the market, what EMBRAPA has been done in these last 50 years. So EMBRAPA soybean was created in exactly 50 years ago, in 1975. So what we do, so since 75, we developed in Brazil the GMO-free cultivars. So even if, let's say, 98% of Brazilian market use GMO, we still keep some production of traditional, conventional cultivars, because it's really important to have these cultivars in the market. Part of this production is important because we have specific markets in the world that import from us no-GMO cultivars, specifically Japan and part of China. They prefer to import GMO-free soybean. So it's important to have this option in the market. So since the beginning, when the GMO started, we already start also to play this role together with Bayer, with the Roundup Ready, when they started in Brazil, and then moving in different technology platforms. Different from here, we didn't start yet to work with Corteva because they start in Brazilian market a little bit later than Bayer started in Brazil. And one thing that's important that EMBRAPA developed in the last years is this chilled technology that we call block and chilled. So this is no GMO technology that we could select from our germplasm bank. EMBRAPA has a soybean germplasm bank with around 65,000 accessions of soybean, and we could select some genes and crossing in traditional way that make some genes resistant to stink bugs, and also some soybean that's more resistant to the Asian rust. So like I told you in the beginning, this is the main disease problem that you have in soybean in Brazil. So this is EMBRAPA's technology, so there is no GMO that the farmers could profitable in the field. But when you give a look in the market in general in Brazil, this is the main companies that we have selling seeds, soybean seeds. So EMBRAPA, we have Bayer with Monsoy, but especially the most important that they license their own technological platform with Intacta and different Intacta extends. Then we have the biggest one, there is GDM, that's already here also in South Africa. And GDM represents in Brazil around 70 or 75% of soybean Brazilian markets. We have also TMG, BASF, with specific one cultivar, one group that they have there, and also Syngenta, that actually it's a Chinese group. It's not more American. They were sold to Chinese group, but they still keeping some varieties or development of soybean seeds in Brazil. When you give a look in the market in general, it's important to see that 87% of all seeds in Brazil is licensed and by multipliers, so they can send directly, so it's not directly sold by these companies. So they license their cultivars, so we have the multipliers that can be much more seeds and sell in the Brazilian market. So actually, when you give a look, 41% of the soybean seeds are selling by dealers, quite one-fourth by cooperatives, so they buy their own seeds, and we have also another one-fourth from the seed multipliers. So the direct sales from the company themselves to the farmer is still really low because we have these multipliers. When you think in EMBRAPA, for example, and not just EMBRAPA, but we have also GDM and other companies, some of these companies have also their own germplasm bank. It means that they receive also some royalties by their genetics that they can license to multipliers and can be sold. But all of them, when thinking GMO, basically we just have these two platforms, Bayer and Corteva. So like I told you, we have these 5 regions in Brazil. And when I give a look at our production, our seed market, it means that the south and part of southeast and center-west, especially here from 1 and 2, these represent 41% of the seeds market in Brazil. The center-west, exactly, mainly by Mato Grosso, Goiás, and this area, this part of what I told you, the Matopi, it means state of Maranhão, Tocantins, and Piauí, and also part of Bahia. This one represents 38% of our Brazilian seed. The other regions, part of Southeast and part of Northeast and North of Brazil, is really small market because of the climate, the soil condition, but it's still starting. This is what I told you, this is the new frontier of soybean in Brazil. So several people, especially in Europe, think that Brazilian is going with soybean to the Amazon. Amazon is here. we are moving to here. So the opposite way. And one thing that's important in Brazil is that this was a market that it was constructed from the last 50 years, but actually 91% of our seeds from soybean, it's certified seeds. Just an average of 9% is the farmers that save their own seeds from one harvest period to sow in the next year. So sure, it's linked to the culture of each region, but when you compare Mato Grosso, that only this state of Brazil represents 28% of all soybean production, they have 99% of certified seeds. So the part of the farmers in this state that save seeds to the next season is really too slow. But when you go to extremely south of Brazil, Rio Grande do Sul, we have really an opposite way. So a little bit around 70% buy certified seeds and 30% save their seeds to the next season. Sometimes we can try to explain this because when the GMO started in Brazil, it was still not allowed. So the farmers from Rio Grande do Sul, they took the seeds from Argentina, so it's really just cross the border, because at this moment in Argentina, it was already allowed to use GMO, but at this time there was no legislation in Brazil. So the farmers, what they did, they crossed the border, took the seeds, and come to Brazil. So when this started in Brazil, I think it was around 2005, when the government gave a look, when the agriculture minister, they analyzed the Rio Grande do Sul soybean production, quite the half of the state was already planting GMOs. So after this, the government was forced to make a legislation about how we can, or if we can or not, sow GMOs in Brazil. So after this, okay, it's already spread. So 98% of our soybean is GMO. So this could be one of the explanations why this state saves seeds, but they need to take care, but because their productivity also is the lowest of the whole regions in Brazil. So, if you don't know, certified seeds is the seeds that the farmers buy directly from the dealer or from the company, or that have already all these technological platforms inside. And in this price that they pay when they buy these licensed seeds is already included the royalties that they pay for Bayer or Corteva. So if you took an average to give you an idea about the costs of a bag of seeds in Brazil, so before they were selling soybean seeds by kilograms, so 20 kilos or 40 kilos, but they completely changed. Now they're selling seeds by numbers. So actually, you pay by 200,000 seeds. That can be from 20 kilos, 25 kilos, 30 kilos. So this is how the market is going in Brazil. Not more by weight, but the number of seeds. So when you think the price of these 200,000 seeds that the farmer buy, it can make a variable from 350 reais, let's say, in rent. So 1,100 hands up to 2,500 hands. And in this price is included the price that the farmers pay for the technology. So Intacta or Enlist, it doesn't matter which one. So for sure, more high is the price, it means also that these seeds could have several layers of treatment with fungicide, insecticides, all chemicals that is possible. So more treatments you have, more expensive is the seed. And the saved seeds, so it's not just a question that the farmer can, okay, I want to save the seeds and point. No, they are forced to inform the Agriculture Minister of Brazil, and also they need to inform the industry system of how much seeds they are saving to be used on the next harvest period in Brazil. Because if they do not inform this, they need to pay extra when they sell their soybean production to the market, to the industry. So, okay, the farmer saved, let's say, 3,000 kilograms of seeds to be used in the next sowing period. So they need to inform the government, they need to inform the industry. They will make a calculation about, okay, how many hectares these saved seeds mean. With this information, they need to pay for the technological platforms. It means the royalties that they pay for Bayer and Corteva. So the price is quite similar from both of the technologies. So if we think about Intacta Pro, Intacta Extend, or just Extend, so we have this variation from 600 rands up to 800 rands. And about Conquista, or Enlist, that's from Corteva, it's around 760 rands that they pay by hectare. So even if they save seeds, they are forced to pay also for the use of this technological platform, okay? They cannot escape from this payment because if they deliver, they will be fined in 7.5% of their the entire shipment of soybean. So it's the reason that really they need to inform all of this. So thinking about all platforms, so we say that the GMO-free started with EMBRAPA in 75, then the Roundup Ready started officially in Brazil in 2001, and then we moved to Intacta Pro in 2010. So this one is not more being used for new varieties. Then we moved recently to Intacta Extend, and just less than 5 years ago that we arrived in Brazilian markets, the Conquista, so Corteva platform technological in Brazil. And what both companies, Bayer and Corteva, what they developed in the last 1 or 2 years is this, is in Portuguese the name, is Cultive Biotech. It means that they can track all the royalties together. The farmers don't need to go to Bayer or Corteva to pay for the saved seeds isolated. They can go directly in this website and make all the information. So both technology are now different company, but just to help the farmers, they're together. So what they normally do, you have the certified seeds and the saved seeds. So the farmer can buy directly from the dealer, so they can buy for a multiplier and the certified seeds. But if they save the seeds before, they are forced to contact directly by direct channel of Bayer or Corteva to inform and fill all papers how much seeds they have saved in the last year and pay the technology. What they do now for all platforms, so when they sell their production and the production arrive or in the silos or even in the ports, so when they receive this, the seeds, the farmer needs to inform, do you have any biotechnological platform in your seed, so is GMO or not. If they say, yes, we have GMO, so they will check if you had already paid for the technological royalty. If it's okay, they receive, they look the volume that you have been declared before, and you can keep it, you don't need to pay anything else. But if you say that, no, I don't have any GMO in my shipment, so they will test exactly to see if it's GMO-free or if you have inside your shipment of soybean seeds, if you have any GMO there. Sometimes they try to mix in the same truck GMO and GMO-free, but if you have GMO over there, they will test, and if they say, okay, it's GMO-free, you don't need to pay anything. But if they look after genetic analysis and they see that, okay, you inform that no GMO, but we find GMO in your shipment, they need to pay 7.5% of all volume that they are delivering in the storage. So this is much more expensive than paying this 200 or 750 rands by hectare in the beginning when they save the seeds. So this is like they're doing actually in Brazil, and the farmers just need to go to this Cultive Biotech website when all platforms are commercializing and doing this payment for their technology together. So it becomes much more easier for the farmer, and for sure, for them, they're still receiving all money all around the year. But when you go give a look in our seed industry, we can say that 63% of what we produce of soybean in Brazil is exported directly to other countries, especially China. But our industry, for sure, have a huge production in all aspects of primary products. So soybean oil is a really important market for us in Brazil. And I will show you then that it's not just for consumption, but you use a lot of soybean oil as a biodiesel. We have also, because we have a huge Japanese and Chinese community in Brazil, and they use a lot of tofu. There is the cheese made by soybean. And for sure, all the meals that is the basis of the feed, especially chickens, fish, porks, and part of our cattle in Brazil is also based on soybean meal. And for sure, other more processive treatments and enzymatics. And so the variation of the soybean industry in Brazil is also extremely. But giving a look in the numbers, so 60%, like I told you, is exported. 36% of our production stay inside our own industries. From these 36%, let's say 80% go to soybean meal production, and 20% go to oil seed production. From these 80% of soybean meal production, quite around 53, it's changed a little bit each year, it can be 50, 55, but it's around 53% are exported. So if you think 63 more 53% of 80% of market, it means that more than 75% of all soybean productions go to other countries. And soybean oil also, even if it's small, just 10%, is also exported. The mainly part of our production stay inside the country. So why it's really important, if you want to improve our oil production, it means that or we need to produce more soybean or in more areas, or we need to stop a little bit of part of our exportation. Just to give you an overview, even it's not linked directly to soybean, but part it is, when you think in biofuel in Brazil, we're not just saying about biodiesel, about soybean oil, but we have a huge production of ethanol in Brazil that use it exactly as an alternative for the gasoline in Brazil. So the cars can use ethanol instead to use with gasoline in Brazil. So our productions is around 35 billion of liters of ethanol the last year. So part of this production, because of the high cost of importing gasoline in Brazil, part of this production of ethanol, around 20 to 25%, are mixed together with gasoline. But when you go to diesel, for example, every year we are increasing 1% of this mix of diesel and biodiesel. The last year, so we had an increase in a production of 7.5 billion liters of biodiesel in Brazil. When we started 10 years ago, we had 3.4. So look how the importance of biodiesel. And what soybean have relation with this increasing of biodiesel production and use in Brazil? 74% in the last year of all biodiesel was based in soybean oil. So 3/4 of the biodiesel was based just in soybean. For sure, we have other oils that can be used, but it's really low amount because the soybean chain already in Brazil is well prepared. So here is Mato Grosso, Goiás, and south of Brazil. So these regions is the biggest soybean grain producers, but they are also the main producers of biodiesel. What means that the regions that you have soybean productions, you bring also to these regions industry that can process this soybean, they can crush, they can produce the meal, and they can produce also oil. And this is the importance that agriculture have in Brazil. So we don't have the farmers here and the industry all around the southeast of Brazil. We have spread in our country exactly where the farmer is. We also have the industry that are close to them. We have other raw materials that can be used to biodiesel. It changes every year, but the basis is still soybean oil. So when you give a look in the productions, Mato Grosso, Paraná, Goiás, Rio Grande do Sul have the most part of the processing of soybean, refining and packaging the soybean in all the different aspects of soybean and products. This is the number by region about biodiesel production. So you can see, even in the south, is still the biggest, it's quite close to the center-west. So like I told you, the two main regions of soybean production are also the two main regions that we have industries to process the soybean grains. And in the beginning, when we start 20 years ago, we start to mix 2% of biodiesel to diesel. We actually, at 14, the government planned for the next year to reach 15%. What 1% represent for us in soybean? This represents that the industry needs to have 8 million tons of soybean grain to process and have enough biofuel, biodiesel, to increase just 1% in our diesel. So 8 million tons of grain, or we need to increase the production, or we need to leave to export. So it's a huge decision, and the farmers and all the communities that represent the farmers that produce soybean in Brazil say, okay, maybe for the next year, we will still not have prepared to increase this 1%. But the government has decided that up to 2035, this amount will increase up to 25%. So 1% represents 8 million tons. What do you think that 11% can represent? A completely change of our reality of soybean production in Brazil, even more. So it's really important that we increase and improve our technology in Brazil to produce more in less area. For sure, we grow 2-3 million hectares every year, but we need to produce much more in this area than expand the areas of soybean production. Returning to the meal, so 80% go to meal, like I told you, half, a little bit more than half is exported, and this is the global way that we use the soybean meal in the world. Let's say 37% to feed poultry, pigs, and look at the oil, 13% for human consumption and 2.8% of biodiesel. But the reality in Brazil, it's a little bit different. So when you compare poultry representing Brazil more than 52% of using of soybean meal, 25% from pig, 15% for cattle, and these numbers for pets, horses, and especially aquaculture to feed fish is increasing every year. And especially, I told you that 21% of our production go to oil. So it's much more than these 16% that are used in the world. So we have 21% that we produce oil from soybean in Brazil, and from this 21%, 74% is converted to biodiesel. So it's much more higher than the average in the world. So this is some numbers to give you an idea about our industry that process and produce soybean meal. So in 2023, we had a consumption or selling about 87 millions of tons of animal feed. If we consider that just poultry, it's 52%, and if you take in account that from this demand of the industry to feed animals, 20 million tons come from soybean, and a little bit more than around 60 million tons come from corn, including these Tyler's dried grains from the corn industry also. So this is a huge number. It's why in Brazil we never say just soybean. We consider in Brazil the soybean complex, because we always have after soybean one kind of crop, corn or wheat or cotton. So Brazil soybean is never alone. It's always together, and this brings all this profitable for the farmers, because they don't sow just a soybean. They can be 2-3 harvests a year, depending on the crop. So also the impact that we have from soybean production, it's in the meat production. So the animal protein is also huge. So just the beef production in 2024, Brazil produced a little bit around 11 million tons of beef. More than 15 million tons of chicken, more than 5 million tons of pork, more than 35 billion liters of milk, and more than 137 million boxes of eggs. So all of this production is directly linked to soybean and corn chain in Brazil. So how the importance of have this production and how they are all linked in the same industry process. When you think about the world in general, we give a look in what is the importer and exporter countries. We can give a look that normally when you think in Brazil, the most part it's exported, especially to China. So China represents actually in the world around 60% of all soybean importation. And when I say soybean for China, I'm saying the grain itself. It's not the meal, it's just the grain. And 60% of the soybean meal go to Europe and Asia. So they import much more the meal than really the grain. So thinking in Brazil and Argentina, for example, and adding value to the farmers and to the industry, Brazil still exports much more the grain than the meal. When you compare to Argentina, for example, the most part of their production was processed in the industry, so they get value in the chain of soybean, and they can receive much more for their production for sure than exporting the grain itself. So this is something that we had to handle in Brazil. To increase the amount that we export, we need also to reduce what we export of grain and start to produce more meal and have a little bit more value that is added to this exportation. Because when you think in Brazil itself, the agriculture have a huge importance in our scenario of exportation in Brazil. But it's not everything heaven. So this is the main problem that we have in Brazil. It's our logistic problems. When I told you that we need to reduce a little bit what export of soybean grain is export a little bit more of meal, this is related that when you think in agricultural products in general, we know that when you export the product itself, they have low added value. So it's really important, and especially it's large volumes. In Brazil, we need to move in long distance. So 2,000 and a half thousand kilometers. Really, it's really huge distance that we need to do. The products are seasonable. We need to be competitive in the markets to compete with, for example, for soybean with Argentina, and especially with the US. And we cannot forget that all these products is agriculture. They are perishable and they have right risk together when you think in climate, weather, soil, biological problems, diseases that we can find during the harvest and especially during the storage of these seeds. So all these are central in logistic problems. So the agribusiness need the logistic to transport, to storage, to give a look in the cost. Compare the risk and the losses that they can have in this selling. And this one doesn't matter if it's transport, storage, agribusiness. This is a public and private initiative that work together. So this is the grain distribution logistic in Brazil. So normally the farmers from the production, they can send their production to the warehouse, to the silos, to storage. So quite whole one is done by trucks, by roads. If they want to send directly to the industry, it's still roads. But when they don't have conditions to storage. They need to export immediately because they don't have where to live, and this is one of the problems you see. They normally, the most part comes also by road. Some areas can still make this transport by rail, and just a small area can do it by waterways. So normally, you see the most common transport for all chain of industry and soybean production in Brazil, not just soybean, for all industry and all farmers, is by road. So exactly as the same problem that you have here, so it's a problem of infrastructure. So giving a look in the warehouses and the storage, this is our scenarios. So we have the silos, and some farmers need to use the silos bag because the price sometimes of the crops is not interesting, so they need to keep them in storage. So, but this one is our main problem. So if you consider that the last year we had, let's say, 340 million tons of grain production, we can just storage 212 million tons. So it means that this 120 million of difference we need to sell immediately. They cannot wait for a better price. So when you think about production, we increase in 15 years more than 100% on our grain production, but we just increase 50% of our storage capacity. That means that we have a deficit of quite 130 million tons every year that we need to handle, and the farmers and the dealers, they don't have any options if not sell immediately after they harvest the crops. And this is what I mean by region when we compare. Even if the farmers try to use the silo bag, we see that some regions, especially in the center-west, the deficit is quite 50% of the whole production of grains in Brazil. So this is the main companies that have their own storage capacity. We can see Bunge and Cargill, the private international companies, but Coamo, Impasa, LAR, Cipal, this one, this one, this one, this one, they're all cooperatives. So this is one of the advantages also of these cooperatives. They can also handle and invest in these silos to store their production. But when you go to one of the most complicated is from the transport from the storage to the ports. 65% of all production in Brazil are transported by road. 15% of railways, just 11% of cabotage, waterways just 5%, and pipelines just 4%. And when we compare this to other big areas or important countries, we can see that 37% of United States production go by rail. In Europe, it's 11, but it's just 47% go a little bit of cabotage, and China have 32%, is more equitable with the way that they transport. And this makes a huge difference because the cost of the Brazilian logistic costs us annually quite $150 billion every year because of the costs of this transport, and especially our roads is not really a dream to travel. We have around 1.7 million kilometers of roads. 7-8% is unpaved roads. So from these 12% that is paved, more than 6% have problems. It's not a dream. So, and these bring costs to Brazil. So when you want to shift this model of roadway transport, we see that we can just changing the way that we can transport this what reduction of logistic we can have by product. So this average is increasing more than 20% that you can change, just changing a little bit the way that we transport the things in Brazil. Just an example. So this is, even if it's 10 years old, from center of Brazil, normally you see the most common is transport from here to the port of Paranaguá or Santos. So it means that from here, 2,165 kilometers by roads. This is the cost by ton. This is the cost 10 years ago. If we go to Paranaguá, it's quite the same distance, and this is the cost. If they shift to part of road and part of rail, they can also have a little bit of reduction. But if they go to another option, but there is not available because the government needs to make all the investments to make this region available to transport grains, there is from the north of Brazil, so just 300 kilometers by road and all the rest by waterway, the price of transport is less than a half, depending on the comparison that you can do it. But to make this useful, the government needs to invest and make this reality. When you compare to the United States, so our cost of transport, let's say it's around $117 by ton. When you compare it to the United States, 64, so this difference needs to be make more useful to the farmers that the soybean in Brazil makes still competitive in the world. This is our reality. So thinking of here, center, we need to invest, and this is what we need to create. This in white is our roadways, not all of them in good condition, not all of them paved roads. So this one is completely unpaved roads. So how they can manage from here to here if it's in cheaper, but it's unpaved roads, it's too expensive. So normally they do this or this. So this is the high cost that we have of transport in Brazil, especially thinking about the most important state that produces soybean in Brazil. So we could handle using these river ports, but we can't actually, because sometimes we use this, but the cost of transport is higher than come by road up to the Santos or Paranaguá port. And to finish, well, this is just to give an idea about the most important ports that we have in Brazil. So Santos and Paranaguá, and here also the other one. We still have some of them, but normally to export to China is cheaper come from this side of Brazil than the north side of the country. And the last one is to give an idea. So here is the city that we call Sorriso, that is the main city that produces soybean in the country. When we compare the cost from soybean from here to arrive Santos or Paranaguá, this is the price that I saw the last week. So actually it's around 400, quite 500 reais. Let's say it's by 3,500 rents to transport to Santos port. A little bit cheaper to Paranaguá in Paraná state, but look, the actual cost to Santarém by roads up to the port here, it's a little bit less, and to here is even less. But the problem is they don't have capacity to absorb all the grain production of the state for the region that this is still keeping coming to south and southeast of ports of Brazil. But for sure, the reality here in the center of Brazil is completely different when you compare to Paraná state, also in the south of Brazil. So we have this region at Cascavel that it's also a big producer of soybean in Paraná. So the distance from here to the port of Paranaguá is around 600 kilometers. So the costs that we have to transport from just this region by road is less than 200, means around 550 rands by ton. You see the difference that we can have in the competitiveness of the production of soybean, depending if you have a good transport system or you don't have. So this one is to give you an overview about our reality, our problems. And I'd just like to show one last one. The people who doesn't know EMBRAPA, we are spread in all around the country. We are 43 different units working with different crops to manage the whole, not just soybean, but the whole agriculture and also animal productions in the country. We are actually a little bit less than 7,500 employees, 2,100 researchers that is linked directly to solve several problems in all agriculture work in Brazil. And EMBRAPA soybean have all this structure, different farmers, and for you that maybe doesn't know, this is some of different colors that we can find in the germ plus bank of soybean. Sometimes most part of us just know the traditional yellow soybean, but we have huge different of colors. Even this green color is not a problem with soybean. This is really a green seed. So this is the importance to have this germ plus bank and to be used in all scenarios that we have in the soybean production. So thank you very much. I'll be here for some questions and we still keep talking after lunch. Thank you.